Alright guys, so in this video we're going to learn about transformations and we're going to talk about the reflection this time. Okay, so this will be day 1 and what you're going to learn in this video is how to reflect over the x-axis and how to reflect over the y-axis. So, and that shouldn't say line of symmetry. So here we should have a line of reflection. And a line of reflection is, and make sure you're putting these key vocab in your word. Your line of reflection is the line that is being reflected over. Okay? And a reflection, it means to just simply flip the image. A perpendicular bisector is, okay, so let me give an example. If this is my axis of symmetry, my line of reflection, so I'm going to call that short line of reflection. And let's say that I have a figure that I'm going to reflect, so I'm going to call this the x-axis right here. I have a figure that I'm going to reflect over that line. So I'm going to call this A, B, C, and then I'm going to call this A prime, C prime, and B prime. Well, what happens is the imaginary path that this line travels along to get from here to there, and from here to here, and then from B to B prime, it is perpendicular to your line of reflection. And it is also a perpendicular bisector to the line of reflection. So what that means when I get to the line of reflection, if the distance from A to that point on the line of reflection is 3, then from that point to the A prime is also going to be 3. That's called a perpendicular bisector. So not only is that path perpendicular to the line of reflection, it is also what we call a perpendicular bisector. That means that the path being traveled along this line is going to be split in half by the line of reflection. Okay, so all you got to do is, that's not tonight's homework. Don't worry about that one. So here it says graph the pre-image and label the points, and then it says reflect the pre-image over the line x over the x-axis, and then write the new points and label the image. So here's what I'm going to do. So first I'm going to graph the pre-image. So I'm going to go 1, 2, 3, 4, -4, oopsie, messing up, -4, -1. So that's my A. And then -4 and -3, 1, 2, 1, 1, 2, 3, there we go. And my C prime would be -1 and -1. Not the C prime, just the C, baby. All right, so this right here is my pre-image. Now it says reflect over the x-axis. So this is telling me that my line of reflection, and I'm writing in short, line of reflection is going to be the x-axis. So I'm going to highlight the x-axis. This is the x-axis, and I am going to flip over that line. Now, we have a rule when we flip over the x-axis. So when my line of reflection is the x-axis, there is a rule. So what happens is the rule tells you if you have x, y as your pre-image, then all you need to do, if we're flipping over the x-axis, keep the x the same and take the opposite of whatever the y value is. Keep the x the same, and this is how you can remember. X stays the same with reflection. X stays the same, and you're going to change the sign of the y-axis, the y value. So you just take the opposite of that sign. So here, to get A prime, I have my x, y as -4 and -1. So when I do the reflection, it tells me to keep the x, so that becomes -4, and take the opposite of the y. So if that's -1, it needs to become +1. So to get my B prime, that was -4, -3, then I need to map that. It tells me to keep x the same, and then take the opposite of y, so that becomes +3. Anytime you see a negative sign, it just means to take the opposite of it. So C prime, -1, -1, keep x the same, so there we go, and take the opposite of y. And there we go. So now I'm going to go graph my primes. So I get -4, so the x should stay the same, and go to +1. That's my A prime. And then I go to -4 again and go to +3, so that's 1, 2, 3. So this is my B prime. And then for C, I go to +1. So go, I'm tripping, y'all. Guess where I messed up at? I changed the X value and I wasn't supposed to. That should have been a -1. And I'm going to tell you guys how I figured it out. So -1 and 1, and that's my C prime. I'm going to connect these dots, and I got it. Now let me tell you how I knew I was messing up and it wasn't supposed to be at 1. Because first of all, the shape shouldn't change. So if I put this way out here, that means the shape is going to change. And not only that, if I fold along this yellow line, which is my line of reflection, and it's the x-axis in this case, then this point should touch this point, and this point should touch this point, and this point should touch this point. Also, the distance from the line of reflection on both sides should be the same. So I have one space here, one space here. So I knew I was going to be wrong. And I have one space up here between it and one space up here. And if I have 1, 2, 3 here, I have, if I go from the line of reflection to B prime, I got 1, 2, 3 spaces. So there's a lot of ways you can count and make sure you're right. Let's go to the next example. Okay, it says graph the pre-image and label the points. Now this time we're going to reflect over the y-axis, and then we're going to write those new points. So I'm going to graph my points first, my pre-image. So that's -4, -1, that's A. And then -4, -3, 1, 2, 3, that's B. And then -1, -1, and that is C. So here we go. This is my pre-image. Oh my gosh. Okay, there we go. I was looking for that back button. All right. So now there is a rule when my line, there is a rule when my line of reflection is the y-axis. Okay? There is a rule. So the rule tells me to change the value of the x, take the opposite of the x, but keep the y exactly the same. Change the value of the x, but keep the y exactly the same. And the way you can remember this is just like the other one. If it says y-axis, then you just say keep y the same, take the opposite of x. So now I'm going to go in here and write these rules down. So to get A prime, I need to take 4 and -1 and map it onto, take the opposite of the x, so it becomes 4, and keep the y the same. And then for the B prime, -4, -3, all right? We're going to take the opposite of the x, so that becomes 4, and the y stays the same. Okay, and then C prime, we get -1, -1. Okay, and then I need to map that to reflect over the y-axis. And so here, we take the opposite of the x, so if that's negative, then we're going to make it positive and keep the y exactly the same. So you just have to memorize these rules, babies, and you'll be in the game. Okay, -1, -1. I was just writing it neater. So I'm going to go and highlight where my axis, where my line of reflection is at. And it said the y-axis this side. So here, ooh, I am struggling. Give me a second, honeys. So I'm going to go highlight this. That's my y-axis. And that is my line of reflection. And so now I'm going to go in here and do my graphing. So my A prime needs to be +4, 1, 2, 3, 4, and -1. And that's my A prime. So I'm looking good so far, because if I flip over this line and I touch it, then I should be good. If I was to fold the paper, these two should touch. Or if I count 1, 2, 3, 4. So if I count 1, 2, 3, 4, I'm good. So I know I graphed it right. And then I'm going to do 4 and -3. So I'm sitting right here for my B prime. And then to get my C prime, I go to 1, -1, and there's my C prime. And I'm going to count to make sure I'm right. 1, 2, 3, wait. 1, 2, 3, 4, I'm good. 1, 2, 3, 4, I'm good. So one to get to the line and then one to get to this line. So I check to make sure I'm in the game, and you can fold the paper and make sure they touch to check that way too. And we're done with that one. Okay, babies, now you try the next two or next three or however many there are, and I will see you guys later.